What I didn't expect in the aftermath of my cancellation was the avalanche of emails and letters that came showering down upon me, the overwhelming majority of which were positive, grateful, and supportive. They came from a cross-section of kind, empathetic, and intelligent people, some of them working in fields dealing with gender dysphoria and trans people, who are all deeply concerned about the way a socio-political concept is influencing politics, medical practice, and safeguarding. They're worried about the dangers to young people, gay people, and about the erosion of women's rights and girls' rights. Above all, they're worried about a climate of fear that serves nobody, least of all trans youth, well. Here she is pretending that she cares about trans people, particularly trans youth, but if she is as educated as a couple of paragraphs ago she pretended to be, or said she was, then she should know that questioning trans people is just in no way helpful and is actively harming this trans youth that she says she is so concerned about. Also note, this is something that I didn't catch at first, but Andrew James Carter on Twitter pointed it out. I'm going to link his Twitter thread down below. It is very good, very educational. And what he pointed out was that she said that she had gotten support from people who work in fields dealing with gender dysphoria and trans people. Exactly what fields and exactly what roles these people had, she doesn't say. So chances are that they are not experts in the field, that they are not medical professionals or psychologists or anything like that, and chances are that they are not working directly with trans people, or they are not working in fields that actually want to help trans people. They could literally be anyone working in any field and have absolutely no experience with trans people or the transgender issue. Which honestly, if they're supporting Rowling, I highly doubt that they have any expertise in the field, and I very much hope that they are not directly dealing with trans people who need help. Next. I'd stepped back from Twitter for many months, both before and after tweeting support for Maya, because I knew I was doing nothing good for my mental health. I only returned because I wanted to share a free children's book during the pandemic. Immediately, activists who clearly believe themselves to be good, kind, and progressive people swarmed back into my timeline, assuming the right to police my speech, accuse me of hatred, call me misogynistic slurs, and above all, as every woman involved in this debate will know, TERF. You were doing nothing good for your mental health? Think about the mental health of the trans people. It would have been way better for us if you just stayed off Twitter entirely. Or at least not spouted this kind of thing. Second, notice that she only wanted to share a free children's book to kids in these trying times, which is admirable. I am not saying it isn't. It is absolutely a good thing, and I'm sure it helped these kids a lot. I am sure they appreciated it. Really, I am not being sarcastic. I'm saying this was good. Truly a good thing to do. However, she brings it up here to imply that trans activists, what, ruined that book for the kids? Or ruined her image of being a through-and-through good person? I don't know. I really don't see the relevance. She's just painting her as a good person who just want to help children, and the trans activists as the bad people who are attacking her. Also, I'm once again saying throwing abuse, not okay, calling names, not okay. The term TERF, however, I'm gonna get to with the next paragraph. If you didn't already know, and why should you, TERF is an acronym coined by trans activists which stand for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. In practice, a huge and diverse cross-section of women are currently being called TERFs, and the vast majority have never been radical feminists. Examples of so-called TERFs range from the mother of a gay child who was afraid their child wanted to transition to escape homophobic bullying, to a hitherto totally unfeminist older lady who's vowed never to visit Marks and Spencer again because they're allowing any man who says they identify as a woman into the women's changing rooms. Ironically, radical feminists aren't even trans-exclusionary. They include trans men in their feminism because they were born women. I'll start there. I do not want to be included in anyone's feminism as a woman. That is not including trans people. That is including me as a woman while denying the trans part of me, the part of me that is a man, which is actually all of me. Not biologically speaking, but either way. They might think that they are including me, but by excluding the trans part of me, they are by definition trans-exclusionary. I don't understand how this is not clear. But I think the point she's making here is that she does not want to be called a TERF. She doesn't identify as a TERF, and I'm not entirely certain why, because it's not the trans-exclusionary part, because she is obviously excluding trans people. Maybe she doesn't identify as a radical feminist. Either way, she doesn't want to be called a TERF. Fine, I won't call her a TERF. I will call her a transphobe instead. See? It's that easy. Let's move on. But accusations of turfery have been sufficient to intimidate many people, institutions, and organizations I once admired who are cowering before the tactics of the playground. They'll call us transphobic. They'll say I hate trans people. What next? They say you got fleas? Speaking as a biological woman, a lot of people in positions of power really need to grow a pair, which is doubtless literally possible, according to the kind of people who argue that clownfish prove humans aren't a dimorphic species. No one is saying that sex isn't real. No one is saying that humans can change their biological sex. Speaking as a biological woman, I know that I will always be a biological woman. I am very, very well aware of this. The other stuff in this paragraph, I'm not even going to touch. So why am I doing this? Why speak up? Why not quietly do my research and keep my head down? Yes, why? Apparently, well, I've got 5 reasons for being worried about the new trans activism and deciding I need to speak up. I have a charitable trust that focuses on alleviating social deprivation in Scotland, with particular emphasis on women and children. Among other things, my trusts support projects for female prisoners and for survivors of domestic and sexual abuse. I also fund medical research into MS, a disease that behaves very differently in men and women. It's been clear to me for a while that the new trans activism is having, or is likely to have if all its demands are met, a significant impact on many of the causes I support, because it's pushing to erode the legal definition of sex and replace it with gender. Okay, she has a couple of points here. Actually, she has a couple of points. There are diseases that do act very differently depending on if the person is a biological male or female. That is true. That is entirely true. And to be fair, I sometimes have to remind doctors that I see that I am biologically a woman, that I have ovaries. I had stomach pains for a long time. I went 15 months with extreme stomach pains. Turned out to be gallstones, but before I knew that, I had to remind every doctor or tell every doctor every time I went into the ER or saw a new doctor, I had to tell them that, hey, I am trans. I have a female reproductive system, because stomach pains can be a symptom of something being wrong with the female reproductive system, and that can be very, very dangerous if it's not treated. So yes, in certain medical situations, it is very relevant for the doctor to know the patient's biological sex. Now, I might be misinterpreting this, but it sounds to me that Rowling is saying that I should never have been allowed to change my legal sex, legal gender, whatever that is, either way, from woman to man, because it could confuse doctors. A doctor also needs to know if I have had major surgery before, what medication I'm on, if I have allergies or other chronic illnesses, and things like that. Those are questions that doctors need to ask all of their patients, and I do not see why we can't just train our doctors to also add a question about biological sex. It's a question that is probably going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable in the beginning, but they'd get used to it. Until then, transgender people are very, very well aware that we need to explain to our doctors what our biological sex is and what kind of surgeries and medication we're on because of that, for them to be able to treat us properly and understand what our symptoms mean. Now, this does not exclude doing research on these diseases like MS, for example, on how they are different for biological men and biological women. This is important to us too. We also want to be able to get the best care possible. And as for female prisoners and survivors of domestic and sexual abuse, these are not projects that are irrelevant to trans people at all. And I am very sad to hear that apparently trans women are being excluded from Rowling's projects into these things. That's not okay. Trans women can be prisoners, and they can and very often are survivors of domestic and sexual abuse. Projects that try to help women in these categories should not exclude trans women, because where are the trans women supposed to go? Where are they supposed to get their help? Let's see if she explains that, shall we?